What's up, guys? Before we get started, just wanted to tell you about this show's sponsor, Brass Tacks Balm and Wax Co. If you're listening, I'm just trying to get the sticker to focus in on the screen. These guys sent me a care package full of all kinds of stuff. Face creams, hand lotion, magnesium foot cream, mustache wax. Been very, very happy with the products that they sent me. So if you would, just do me a favor, go to Instagram, give them a follow, check out their products, and maybe order something. Other than that, guys, I hope you enjoy the show. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Lead Well Wednesdays on the Tailboard Misfits podcast. We got another good episode planned for you today. We're going to go back and revisit some of the things we talked about on the last episode and really dive in to that last one. So the last episode, we sat there and we talked about mission, vision, and strategies. So I'm going to let Brad talk about mission and vision, just give a good recap of that, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, so if you guys didn't listen to the last podcast, definitely go listen to the last podcast. There's a lot of meat there and borderline beating a dead horse on what we view mission and vision as and why it pertains to personal growth. So mission, not that we can't start with a vision, but it's always good and really critical to go back and define mission, which mission is why we do what we do. And vision is just the manifestation, whether something that we see or something in our head of what that mission of where we want to go. That's the what. That's the substance. So mission is the why, and then vision is the what. So if we catch a vision, make sure we define why we want to do what we want to do. That's going to help us maintain consistency as we start to build goals and build a plan to execute that vision and end up where we want to get. So mission is the why, vision is the what.
Right. And just to hit on it, we said last episode, because what we're going to be talking about today is really rooted in the fact that we've already established our mission and we've already established our vision. And so now we're going to build on that. And we said last episode that we oftentimes fail our visions because they're not deeply rooted in the mission. So make sure you have a solid foundation with the why, and then you have obtainable visions to where we want to go, the whole what process of it. So we kind of have a set of things that we want to talk about, whether or not we get to those, because we do want to keep these short and sweet for you guys. The first one we're going to talk about is leading yourself. So really developing strategies and what does it look like to lead yourself well. And I'll kind of kick this off here for me and tell a funny story in the mix. So on Tailboard Misfits, whenever Gunner was running this, we had Chief Corley Moore from Firehouse Vigilance. And this was very early on in what I would consider my leadership journey. And I had all these questions that I thought were really great questions. I was like, man, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to ask all these good questions. I'm going to get all the answers I need, blah, blah, blah. And like each question I answered, or each question I asked, it all started with, man, you got to look in the mirror. That's what he kept telling us. You got to look in the mirror because it starts with yourself. Like you can never expect to lead a crew or those around you without leading yourself well first. And so I wanted to hit on real quick that the mirror principle, right? Like you have to be able to be self-aware and look and see where you're at within your leadership journey. Know your blind spots, know where you need to grow in, and really define, like we already talked about, why you want to be that type of leader. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I got a question. Like when we talk about personal growth and learning to lead ourselves well, what areas do you feel like for you have grown in to be self-aware and kind of establish yourself to start that growth process? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I can answer this one pretty easily. So I've talked about it before on several different podcasts. Me and you have had great conversations about it. I remember when I was new in Longview, I came in with a little bit of experience and I was just so eager to, what I perceived to be at this point was so eager just to prove myself. I was around you guys at the time, Driver Winchell, like just a bunch of like top-notch dudes and guys that were into the job, that were good at their job. And like, more or less, like I wanted to be like one of those people. And so I found myself one, talking too much, but two, just really involving myself in conversations that, not saying that I didn't need to be a part of, but what I mean when I say that is I shouldn't have been talking so much during those conversations. I should have been the one just sitting back and listening. And so really being like, of course, and I probably had some assistance through guys like you, some other guys that I was working around at the time, like to bring awareness to that situation. And so moving on from there, like, no, it hasn't been perfect, but just being super aware of my company, as far as like who I'm around, what the conversation is, and then really just like sitting back and keeping my mouth shut unless like they ask for my opinion, unless people ask what I thought of the situation. So I think that when it comes to a certain circumstance like that, it really just becomes apparent that you just have to be self-aware of who you're around, the conversation being had, because a one-year fireman probably shouldn't be having conversations about engine company tactics or whatever. You're still very much learning those things. And so just being aware of your company, being aware of the conversation being had, and whether or not that you should really be even attempting to add value to those conversations.
Yeah. So what do you think, like, we talk about executing strategy. So okay, I listen to the podcast and, Velez tells me, like, all right, before I can lead a group of people, which the quote that I butchered, here it is: if you can't lead one, you can't lead many. If you can't lead yourself, you will never lead any. So it starts with ourself. Like you said, it starts in the mirror, what Corley said. Like, a lot of people have said that. So if we want to be a leader, if we want to gain influence, we have to give a reason to be followed, right? And that starts with ourselves. So what do you see as like traits of a leader that makes them worth following? Because we talk about catching a vision, that's a lot of time where it starts, right? We see somebody that embodies that leader that we want to be, and so we catch that vision. We're like, man, that guy knows how to lead well. He cares about people, or whatever those characteristics are that attract us, that give us a reason to follow them. What do you think those are for you? What do you think those are as a fireman in the fire service? What do you think we're looking at in those characteristics to follow people?
Yeah. For me, and like I said, these are very like not personal in a sense I don't want people to know, but they're very specific to me, I guess is what I'm saying, because it's all about the growth for me. And I think we've all probably struggled with the first one that I'm about to say, and that's selfishness. Um, as a young man, I was very selfish. I wasn't an only child, but very much grew up in an only child house. My siblings were very much older than me. And so, really, I was always looking out for myself, doing things for myself in a very selfish way. And so, as I got older, as I got married, as I had kids, as I got into a career where literally, like, as soon as you take an oath, you sign the right to be selfish away. I really had to grow in that sense of putting others before myself. And then I'm not talking about, like, I know we glorify and it should be the citizens. I'm talking about like my crew, the guys I work with every day. And I've 100% not perfect at that, but like really trying to figure out what it means to put others before myself and be selfless when I show up to work or show up on a call. And I've battled that fight all the time, right? We talk about taking care of each other at work, whether you're on the engine or the ambulance, and you know, I feel like I'm not alone when I say this. The last thing I want to do when I'm on the engine is offer to take a call for the guys on the ambulance. And I have to fight that internal battle with myself when I am on the engine. Like, dude, these guys are getting their asses kicked. Like, I should say something. Hey, I'm not proud to say that I've had that thought before and never stepped up and said anything, but I do try to be conscious of that and really just say, like, hey, be selfless in that moment. So the first one would be being selfless rather than selfish. And then kind of hit it during that, but just really figuring out what it means to just care about the guys, care about the people that we're with. And I know that's kind of along the same vein of selflessness. And then the other one that I would say is like the attitude part of it. It's another thing that I know you and I have talked about before is just having a really good attitude regardless of the circumstance. I'm going to get this wrong. Be an optimist rather than a pessimist. Try to see the silver lining in every single, um, problem, I guess, that comes up. So for me, those two are the two big ones for me that I try to work on daily. Sure, at work, but also in my personal life. Of one, being selfless, putting others' needs before my own, and then my attitude towards problems. I guess that's a blanket statement, but towards things.
Yeah. No, I think those are good. I think, we could add 1,000 things to that, but I think at its core, but you said caring about others, and I think you can kind of lump that into selflessness.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I believe that, to, and I think I've said it before on here, but if a leader gets one thing right in a formal capacity, you have to care about other people. And it's a genuine caring of others, a genuine seeking to provide for others, to be that selfless, leader and meet the needs of other people. They say a good leader provides three things: protection, direction, and resources. And those are all things that require work, and it's all a giving mindset. It's never of what I can gain from the circumstance. I think that's what makes a leader. So if you get one thing right, you got to value other people, like truly value, and you got to see the positive in people. I know we've had the conversation a lot, and reminded each other at times of what that looks like. But I often find myself, when I come to a time of prayer, is praying that God would allow me to see others how He sees them. Because a lot of times we can have somebody come into our firehouse that has a bad reputation, or that we don't like, that we feel like their values don't align with our values, and it's really easy in the flesh to like alienate them and kind of turn them away. And I think what we are called to be as Christ followers, and what we are called to be as really servant leaders, is to find the value in those people. Because I personally believe that God created everybody for a purpose, and He loves them, and there's value to be had from each person. And when we can have that perspective of what it looks like to value that individual, to find the silver lining, as you said, to see what they can contribute to the mission and the cause, I think that's when we start to make it easier to love them, if that makes sense. Because if we all see if all we see is the leader is the negative, well, then we're never going to gain that person's influence, and we're never
Mm-hmm.
going to show them value. And so you limit yourself in that regard. So yeah, I would say, just to echo what you said, like for me, the first thing that you got to get right is caring about other people. That is, in and of itself, in my opinion, is what marks a good leader. So
Yeah, and to take it way back in the early days of TBM when Gunner was still running it, and I've remembered this since then because it just kind of struck a chord with me. He was a Marine, right? We both know that. He said that a lot of the best leaders he worked with, or one specifically, said true leadership is rooted in love. And I was like, I've never thought of it at that time. I've never thought of it in that way. Like, you have to love people, right? And I don't want to say it's our mission statement for our church, but one of the scriptures we say at the very end of church every single Sunday is, I think it's in the book of John. It says, "Love one another as I have loved you." Right.
yeah.
So I've really tried that. Of course, hearing that repetitively over and over every Sunday at church, and then going through the leadership, my leadership journey, if you will, and figuring out like, okay, like this all aligns with things and that I value and hold true. So I think that's a big thing. Is like you gotta love people, and you can't show partiality, right? I think I've had that conversation with you, uh, being fairly convicted at church one night and realizing how partial I have been, not just to people that we work with, but people that we are supposed to be there to serve. Treating some people better than others, strictly based off maybe their circumstances or their appearance as far as like what they're wearing. So anyways, I wanted to add to that a little bit.
Well, that's wisdom, right? And praise God that you receive that wisdom, that you have that understanding that God allowed that, because we all, both of us, I know, stand behind the quote, you cannot change what you can't define.
Mm.
And so when we can define where we're at, good or bad, in that circumstance, probably not a healthy place. When we can define it, it gives us the ability to change. Doesn't mean that we will, right? But it gives us the knowledge and ability to be able to do that. So that's
Yeah,
awesome.
and then I want to ask you. So, we're talking about leading ourselves, and a lot of times, like it's super hard. Like we're way harder. I'm way harder on Brad Conrado than I am on John Velez when it comes to. I don't want to say judging you, but perceiving where you're at. You're way harder on me than I am on you, or than you are on yourself. So, you as a leader, as a man trying to lead yourself, do you have like a I don't know, like a tactic, a technique to really just see where you're at when it comes to yourself?
Yeah, I come back to the quote. I quote the Bible verse often, right? Take the log out of your own eye before you take the log before you point the one out in your brother's. Like you got to look, you got to examine yourself. It's easy for us to see all the problems in the world and see all the problems in people. Much easier than pointing out our own flaws, because
Mm-hmm.
then that takes a huge level of humility, and that's hard, right? So I come back to that verse a lot. And, I spend a lot of time in prayer. I spend a lot of time in reflection. And I'm always working in areas of my life, right? The perception is just that. And I'll be the first to say that I don't have it all figured out. And I screw up all the time. I go through seasons where you're like, bro, why are you doing these things? And I can't give a solid answer other than laziness, complacency, pride, arrogance. And I have to constantly die to my flesh, right? The Bible says, die to your flesh daily, pick up your cross daily, and that's work, man. And I don't get it right every day, but I think a constant desire to want to achieve where I want to go, to being really, really rooted in my mission, that is life, not just a fireman. I think that helps bring me back to center, and continue to pick it up and go and move instead of just throwing the towel in and just saying I'm just going to do what serves me and what feels right. So yeah, probably that Bible verse, and as far as just seeing where I'm at and using it as a litmus of okay. And then, man, something that I started doing a few years ago is just writing down goals throughout the year that align with the vision of where I want to go, right? Rooted in the mission of my life. And then revisiting those. Like, okay, I set out on these goals and gave myself a 3 year or a 3 month plan, a 6 month plan, a 1 month. Where am I at? And I'm gonna be honest, dude. There's a lot of times where I don't hit those, but it's a good litmus, if you will, to be able to test like where I'm at and how quickly am I growing, if I'm growing at all, and yeah. So I'd say those are probably two of the main things.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of curious because, and you're probably aware that I do this, but one thing that I've focused on is, I heard this concept of, and I'm sure it was Maxwell or Groeschel somewhere along those. I've heard of this concept of leadership blind spots, right? Like there's certain things that we don't know that we do that might not really um, benefit us or push the needle forward. And so something that I find myself often to do with you, with my wife, with um, other people that I'm around often is literally just like ask them or ask questions like, um, where what am I not seeing? Like, where can I grow? What do you see that I'm not doing well? And I'll be honest with you. Like, I used to hate construct, or not even. I used to hate like hard conversations. I won't even say constructive criticism. I used to hate it. I used to get super defensive, and I used to like pretty much shut down and almost like, no, that's not true at all. But so it takes a lot of work for me to hear the things that I need to work on that I haven't been doing well. When realistically, like some of the things, like I thought I have been doing well, And so, uh, do you or have you in the past like have those people that you go to and your circle, right? That can be able to have those hard conversations with you about some things that you may not be doing up to par that those people know that you value.
I do, yeah, definitely. I've got a circle of friends, and circle of people that I have that opportunity. And I think you have to be intentional about building that circle. We talk about practical steps and grow in growth, and you have to surround yourself by people that love you enough to tell you how much you suck, right?
Mm,
I can't remember the quote that we were talking about the other day. We surround ourselves by people that align with the same values so that we can remind each other who we are in the mission when we tend to forget, because we all
mm,
tend to forget. And
mhm,
so I think surrounding yourself by people that will call that out in you is critical. And then, second to that, you can surround yourself by people that'll do that. But if you don't receive it, if you're not willing to set your pride down and walk humbly and recognize that you're a human and you suck, and that's okay, then you're falling short and you're losing a lot of opportunity for growth. One thing that I found myself telling new guys that would come to our firehouse, and when we help in the orientation and FTO program on the ambulance, like I would tell guys, and I was preaching to myself, honestly, but I would tell guys, in the Bible, it says, do not cast your pearls before swine. Okay, now let's unpack that a little bit in one context. And I think, like, if somebody comes to me, right, if John Velez comes to me and says, hey, Brad, I think you're messing up in this area or you're slipping in this area, our first gut reaction is to do what?
shut down,
To shut
100%.
down,
Be
to shut
defensive.
down or react, right? Exactly. To get defensive and try to defend our position and defend our ideology and the reasons why we did things. And that's pride, right? It disables us from being able to learn. Okay. So it's really interesting when you start to shift your perspective. When John Velez comes to me and says, hey, man, I think you're slipping, I listen to tone and intent, right? And
Mhm,
if his tone and intent reflects a genuine desire to help me grow, and I know that that relationship with John Velez, I know he cares about me, I know he wants the best for my life, he's coming to me because he sees an opportunity for growth. Man, what a blessing that is. What a blessing it is to have people in my life that want me to get better and are so bold as to come to me and tell me, hey, bro, you're slipping,
mm,
right? So when we react, we don't enable ourselves to be able to learn. So what should we do in those situations? We should ask good questions, right? Okay, obviously a guy that cares about me, right, wants to ask me questions and tell me that I'm slipping. So ask good questions back, right? Okay, you say that I suck. Well, why do I suck? Why am I failing in this area, right? What happens when we react and we react and we react and we don't give ourselves? Well, now that person, John Velez, if every time John Velez comes to me and says, "Bro, you're slipping," and I just defend my position every time, now he does not see the opportunity for me to grow. And what does he do? He washes his hands of me, right? And so we talk about in the firehouse, it's kind of a roundabout way of saying, bro, we jack with you because we like you,
mm,
right? Be scared when nobody's talking to you. Well, it's the same principle. If people do not see an opportunity in an individual to grow and they've washed their hands of them, they're not going to tell them anything. They're just going to let them be a bump on a log. And so, yeah, I think it's crucial that you surround yourself by people that are willing to call that out in you, and you have to give them the ability to do that,
mm,
right? Being told that I suck at something is hard, bro, especially when my flesh creeps in and I want to be good. I'm trying desperately to live my life and grow in a positive direction. It's hard when people come and tell you difficult things. So I encourage you, if someone's coming to you and you check that tone and you check that intent and you know that their mission is pure and what they're trying to tell you is genuinely trying to help you grow, ask good questions. And if you can't in the moment, if what they just told you is too hard to deal with, then tell them respectfully, I appreciate what you just told me. Give me some time to process. And then go think about it before you come back and ask questions. Because sometimes that's really hard, dude.
mm.
Depending on the context, sometimes you just want to defend and it's so hard to even ask good questions because you're just seeing red. So yeah, to answer your question, you got to surround yourself by people that are willing to call you out and want to make you better. And you
Yeah,
got to
and
find those people.
while you're talking, and I had like this practical example, I would consider you part of my circle to call me out when I need to be called out. And I feel like I could do the same thing for you. But there was an interesting thing that just popped in my head we were talking about. And this is a couple months ago, right? We weren't necessarily on the track physically that we maybe wanted to be, especially with our diet, right? Like we all know firehouses. Uh, and like I remember you had like, all right, I'm done with this. Like I got to get better. I'm like, and I probably made like a smart butt comment about like you eating ice cream or something. And I don't remember specifically, but you were like, you said, something along those like, well, if you saw this, like, why didn't you tell me this? Like, it obviously wasn't that big a deal. It's like, I can't call you out about eating ice cream when I'm sitting in the recliner next to you with a cup of ice cream myself. And so, like, it just proves a good point. Like, okay, if you want to call someone out about something, like, and I don't know, maybe you have a different thought, but like, I specifically, let's use that example. Like, I can't tell you, hey, bro, I think your diet has sucked here lately. You really need to get back on track. Well, I have a bowl of ice cream sitting right next to you doing the same thing. Like, you got to make sure that you're walking the path that you want to call someone out on, right? And I won't say it has to be perfect, because you need that, you have to have that in there, but you can't go up to someone and be the most arrogant, egotistical prick in the world and tell someone else that they're egotistical.
Well,
Like,
that's
you
part
have,
of leading yourself well first, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. And so, yeah, I love that. Whenever you told me the whole tone and intent thing when it comes to having, or more or less receiving that difficult conversation or criticism, if you will, I wrote that down because that was good. Not only do you need to pay attention to that when you're receiving it to know if it's genuine and authentic, but you also need to pay attention to it whenever you begin to deliver that difficult conversation. You have to remember that. Okay, I think that's pretty good on the self part. Let's move into like growing and what it looks like to set out strategies to grow as a leader in leadership. I know for me, coming and starting out, like, I had this thought of what leadership was, and then being around certain people and getting cued into different podcasts and different books and everything. I've just been exposed to all of these, what I like to call leadership is this umbrella, and there's so many different aspects, like all the different spokes of an umbrella, are all these different characteristics and concepts of leadership. And so, setting out to be a good leader after you've learned how to lead yourself well, what does that look like in your life and what you've done to grow specifically in your leadership?
So it's a multi-pronged approach, if you will. I think one of those, and one of the key things, is kind of in the same vein that we've already mentioned, is surrounding yourself by people that are going to make you better. I don't remember the quote, and I don't want to butcher it, but it was Maxwell. It was somebody that I followed that said you should be spending, and they gave a percentage, but you should be spending the majority of your time with people that are better than you. People that are that you have the vision of where you want to go, and you can ask them questions and they can mentor you. So I'd say that's probably the most critical, is find people that embody the leadership that you want to obtain, and get in their pocket, ask them questions, get them to mentor you. And it doesn't have to be in person, right? And I think that would be the second part to that. Like, mentorship is probably the biggest key component to growing in leadership. I have a lot of mentors that I've never met, and that kind of leads me into the second part, which is through reading and podcasts and YouTube videos. Find people that you respect their leadership style and the way that they lead and the information that they feed you, and follow them, right? Uh, Probably two people that are huge in my mind when it comes to external mentors would be Craig Rochelle and John Maxwell. Like, those are the two that come directly to mind, and I consume almost all of their content, especially Craig Rochelle. I've listened to every podcast that he's put out. I've read almost every book that he's written. John Maxwell, same thing. I can't say I've read all of John Maxwell books,
All 85 books.
Yeah, I'll get there in about 80 years. Yeah. So, but I've digested a lot of his content. So seeking out mentors. And then second to that is, there's never a better time to lead than today. You're never going to be a perfect leader on day one. You can't gather all this information before you start attempting to lead well. So I would say, as you learn these principles or you learn these things from these leaders, just start doing it, right? It's not going to be pretty at first, right? We are inherently selfish beings. We are self-seeking beings, and we have to die to ourself to serve others. And so I would say, as you learn these things, just put them into practice, right? I've said it before. Knowledge without action is absolutely useless. You have to put it into practice. So learn these things and put it into practice. And walk in humility. Walk in the recognition that you're gonna fail and you want to fail well. Surround yourself by people that are going to call you out. Take that information, grow. And yeah, I'd say those are the biggest things as far as it pertains to leadership growth. Mentors that are leaders, and then you got to read, bro. Some people hate reading, so just start in little bite-sized chunks, right? 10 pages a day. We've said that before, 5 pages a day if you have to. And you will be blown away by just reading 5 pages a day or 10 pages a day, where that will take you. You'll be able to digest a lot of content. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know specifically when it comes to reading, I used to hate reading. And I think before I started, learning leadership, I'd probably read a book since high school. And now like I'm reading multiple books at a time. So, but that was starting off with the whole 10 pages a day thing, right? Like I promise you, I haven't, that wouldn't be me today if I didn't start small. So yeah, leadership. And I have a question because and I kind of have an answer for myself, but I want to hear your opinion is, so you're someone that, hasn't been a leader, they're kind of starting on a leadership journey. They might not have been doing things the correct way. What is the most important step in starting that leadership journey? Because what I mean by that is, I've been prideful, I've been arrogant, I've been selfish rather than selfless. I just haven't been a good leader. So you show up, right? There's no better time to start leading than now. You show up and now you're starting to become this person that other people perceive you not to be. And what I'm getting at is, how do you show that authenticity, that the fact that like, hey, I don't want to be that person anymore. This is me being very authentic, right? Rochelle says people would rather follow a leader that's always real than a leader that's always right. And so how do you really show that realness, that authenticity, when you just really haven't been performing that way in the past?
I would say it takes a gross amount of humility. You got to walk in humility. If you're not willing to set aside your pride, you're never going to be that. And that's hard, right? Especially for some people that may feel like they're not prideful. They're blind to their own ignorance. I think that's why you have to surround yourself by people that'll call you out on it. Especially when you're growing and trying to move in a positive direction. But you have to be willing to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I suck and I need to get better. And being open to criticism, right? From people that care about you and want to see you grow. I think it takes a lot of humility, and then just being okay with failing and falling on your face in front of people. Transparency is huge. That's a mark of authenticity, and people will sense that. I've always said it doesn't matter how smart or dumb you are. People are really, really good at picking out people that are being inauthentic, right? Whether they're telling a story or whatever. Like, it's really easy to figure out the people that are throwing you some crap or if they're being authentic. And so, yeah, I would say, I mean, your question, the answer was in your question. I think walk in a transparent, authentic way and just telling people, man, I walking humbly. I haven't got this right in the past. I'm trying to get it better now. I'm working on it, and I think that's where you start.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's just like, as far as like, okay, and put it in context of your crew at work, right? Like, you've been this person that's been selfish and you've been arrogant and stuff like that. It's just coming out and having that transparent conversation of like, I know that I have been wrong and I'm working on that. I'm not promising to be perfect, but just know that, like, and I also think it helps, like, right, your crews you should be at least arguably some of your best friends, and you should be super close to them. And I think offering up the fact that, like, hey, if you guys see me slipping here, and here, like, you guys have the right to call me out. Like, accountability works regardless of the circumstance. So I think that's good. If you let it. Okay, so we're coming up on 35 minutes. I want to get into firemanship, growth as it pertains to being a fireman, and what does that look like as a rookie, maybe? What does it look like even if you're just not where you think you should be as a fireman, to really set out, And like I said, we kind of already hit on it. You really need to be rooted why you want to in why you want to be a good fireman. And then you have your vision and what it looks like to grow in firemanship.
Yeah. So coming back to that I want to grow as a fireman. So maybe it starts with casting a vision of the fireman that I want to be. Maybe as a new guy, or maybe even as a senior guy, that maybe you just come into the realization that you're just not a good fireman. Like I don't know. I think you have to be honest with yourself, which takes a level of humility, and then casting a vision of what that looks like. Again, all rooted in why you want to do that. And we talk about firemanship and what it means to be a good fireman. I think you have to recognize at the core of your mission for yourself, uh, it has to align with the mission of what the fire service stands for, which is I am here to be of service unto others by protecting their life and their property. That is my job. That's what I signed up to do. That is the oath that I took. I stood up in front of a lot of people and put my hand in the air and said, I am willing to sacrifice my needs, my wants, my desires, um, and my life, if need be, to protect others. That's what I'm here to do. And so I think when you can get deep into why you're doing what you're doing, then you can set out on, okay, let's get practical and what that looks like. How do I pivot from here? And so it's a lot of the same stuff on how to lead yourself well. Do you want to get super practical? It's just like,
Yeah, and I want to hit on this real quick, and then yes, I'll kind of explain where I think we need to go with this. But like, let's just say this as a rookie, as a brand new guy, you might not be, and this is a question more than a statement. You might not be super rooted in why you want to be a good fireman. You might just see a really good fireman and I want to be like him. It might not be this deep and practical sense that maybe you and I have at this point of laying down my life. It might be something along the lines of like, no, he's a good fireman. I see what he does. I just want to be like him. And I think that as we grow in our fire service career, our whys can change because I know mine has for sure. At the beginning, it was, I want to be one of them. I want to emulate what they're about and what they do. And as I've learned about like why I even want to be like them, why are they the way that they are? My mission has changed over time. And
or become more clearly defined. Yeah.
yes, yeah. The clarity has been brought to me. But yeah, getting fairly practical at what it looks like to grow in your firemanship as far as intentionality at the firehouse with training, going to outside classes, conferences, outside read, or not necessarily outside read, but readings and stuff like that. What did you do specifically when you realized like there's more to firemanship than what I know there to be at this point?
Like when did I have the realization that the fire service was much bigger than what I thought?
Yeah, and then like maybe goals and steps you took to be where you're at today.
Okay, so I've been in the fire service since 2010, I think. I'm career fireman in 2014. The first few years of my career I spent as a travel medic at a firehouse, occasionally riding a fire truck and really, really wanting to ride a fire truck all the time. But I was with a crew that was super senior and they just didn't invest in me a lot. I don't know if they didn't see me being worth invested into or if it was complacency in their own careers. I don't know. Uh, but I would say I didn't really grasp what the fire service was about. I would agree that probably when I first got into it, it seemed like a good job, had a good retirement, and it looked cool. I was a young guy, and that's probably what enticed me initially. And then I got into the fire service, uh, and I started working that 3 years, and really kind of just fell out of love with the fire service. I didn't really enjoy it. It's not what I thought it was going to be. We always talk about, uh, media does a really poor job of, with the Chicago fires and all the TV shows of making guys think that the fire service is a certain way. And then they get in and they realize it's very, very different than what they thought. Well, I was experiencing all that. And guys weren't investing in me. And I kind of got a view of what I thought the fire service was, which is just we hang out with our bros, we run a lot of med calls, go to a few fires, and then go home. And it wasn't till I got assigned probably 3-ish years into my career to a firehouse that was engaged. And I've talked about him before, Stephen Winchell. He was a fireman there at the time. Uh, and had some pretty intentional conversations with him and just saw the kind of fireman that he was. And I don't want to paint him in too much of a higher light, not to bring him down or anything, but I think he was going through some growth too in that area. And I want to say he attended a firemanship conference when he was still in Portland and came back to our crew. And man, it was just like this guy just had a life-changing experience, like he found Jesus or something. And I was like, what happened? Like, and he's just like, man, I thought I had everything figured out about the fire service, because we just saw our glimpse of what the fire service was, where we're at. And he started encouraging me to take outside classes. So I went to, I think the first class I ever went to outside of our department was nozzle forward in Austin. Probably 2017 ish. And, bro, it changed me. I was like, wow, man, there's dudes that are into the job. And Aaron Fields stood up on stage and said, it's okay to be into the job. It's okay to be good at your job. It's okay to want to get better at your job. And kind of just changed my perspective, I think is what it was. Just realizing that there's so much more to the fire service, and it's okay to want to seek that and be better, and not just want to be perceived as a good fireman, which I think was kind of our culture at the time, is just having the perception of being this, hoorah, tough, willing to do anything kind of guy. That was like the mark of a good fireman. And then I really started peeling back the layers and looked at the larger American fire service and realized like there's so much more to being a good fireman, and we haven't even scratched the surface. So I'd say that was probably it. Spending time with him and then just being engaged. It was like someone lit a fire under me, and I started going to a lot of classes, which that took a toll on my family, which is a conversation for another day. But got super into the job, almost to a self-detriment, and started learning things, started understanding what the job was about, why the fire service even began, and why it is a thing still, and kind of the direction that we're headed, and some areas where we're getting off and need to come back to. And yeah, I think that's kind of a little bit of it.
Do you still like have a goal to, read X amount of books about the fire service a year, or attend X amount of classes or lectures or hands-on stuff a year? Or is it at this point, understanding where you're at in your career, and that maybe you can even go back to like, at one point, did you have that set out? And then now, like, is it just, oh, hey, I really want to take a specific class and it comes available and you take it? Or do you have like set in stone number of, I will do this, this, and this?
I think it has evolved over the years. I think I hit real hot and heavy. Like if there was a class, I was going to it. If there was, if so and so said, hey, they're going to a conference, I'm going to it. Like, I wanted to just soak up as much as I could. Once I saw the light, if you will, like it was like, bro, I got to go to everything. I got to learn everything from everybody. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm a 3-year fireman. Yeah, I'll go to ODP leadership conference. I'll be an officer one day, maybe, and
Yeah.
and so I felt like I wanted to just soak up as much as I could. And not that that's necessarily changed. I think what it looks like has changed for me a little bit. Not that I'm like super senior by any stretch. I've been career fireman for 11 years now. Like, but I think I'm just a little more intentional about the direction of the learning that I seek out externally.
Yeah.
I think it went from trying to consume a lot of firemanship content and learn the fundamentals of firefighting and seeing different perspectives and why search is important. How do we do that well? Why stretching lines a certain ways is more effective than others, and just trying to get into that and understand it. And I feel like I've got a a good base knowledge of the fundamentals and what it looks like to maintain proficiency in those. By no means do I think I've figured everything out about searching buildings or stretching lines. I think that never ends, right? There's always more to learn in those areas. But I feel like at this point in this season in my life, my education is just more focused. So if I'm talking to the fireman that's just getting into the job, or maybe somebody who's been disengaged for years and wants to get into the job, I think seeking out blue collar firemanship classes is the way to go. Learning all the fundamentals of firefighting. What does it look like to have a good foundational understanding of your job in your position, whether you're a truck fireman, whether you're an engine fireman, or you do both, and really being able to wrap your head around what it takes to be good, not necessarily trying to be good, because I don't think you ever arrive to that. I think you can have an understanding of what it looks like to pursue that, and I think that's where I would start taking a lot of classes. But yeah, this point in my life, I'm looking at possibly promoting in the future. So I'm looking at more leadership stuff and more kind of focused on my career where I'm at. But yeah, that's what I'd say to the new fireman. Go take a lot of classes, learn how to do your job well. When I got into the fire service, our culture was promote as fast as you can, prepare yourself for that next step. And I had a really good fireman that worked with us at the time that said, man, you don't need to be focusing about the next step. You need to be focusing about being really, really good at your job right now. And he defined for me what that looks like. You got to go to classes. You got to learn what it looks like to be able to do your job well. In the back of the ambulance, in the back of the engine, in the back of the truck, right? Whatever you pick, you got to learn how to do that job really, really well. And once you feel like you've figured out what it looks like, you've now seen what not necessarily that you've gone down the path, but you see the path of what it takes to be a good fireman. That's when you can start to really dig in and just beat to death the fundamental skills of firefighting. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I would I would just literally repeat what you just said. I think last year was that year for me. I stretched myself thin with classes. I went to a lot of classes and a lot of conferences last year. And as a new fireman, I would definitely recommend that, and it's way easier when you don't have a family, obviously, like that throws a mix in it, but just be intentional about the classes that you go to and get as much of the, like you said, the fundamentals and hands-on stuff as you can. I think someone told me, and it might've been our battalion chief, he said like classes are what you need to focus on as a new guy. Conferences are where you go to just to get refreshed.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
if you can go to a nozzle forward or a VS beyond the door, or some of these just hands-on classes that you can get into as a new fireman, that's where your focus should be at. And then as you get further into your fire service career and you start, you'll figure it out. You probably already know what I'm talking about. You kind of get in this point where you're just kind of, I don't even want to say burnt out, but you're just kind of like almost feeding into a season of complacency. That's when you schedule you a conference to go to and just go get around like-minded people. And it's just a real good refreshment of the fire service and kind of light that match again to keep going. So, yeah. All right. We went a little longer than usual, but I think this is going to be a good one. I hope you guys found value in this episode. Do us a favor. Please go out and share this episode. Watch it with your crew. We love seeing people watch these episodes. Send me a DM of it up on the TV at the firehouse. Watch it at home. Share it on Facebook. Share it on Instagram. Just keep sharing the show because that's the only way that this thing is going to grow. We'll be back in a couple weeks for another episode of Lead Well Wednesdays. Till then, just remember, the best leaders know the way, show the way, go the way. Stay ready, stay humble, and we'll see you on the big one.
Yeah, let's take a trip. Just sit back and light a